a critical phase with proposals that could significantly reshape the country's political and economic structure. At the heart of the ongoing review are calls for inclusive governance and stronger citizenship rights, alongside long-standing demands for devolution of powers, fiscal federalism, and a more equitable revenue allocation system. As lawmakers deliberate, the outcome of this process could redefine the balance of power between the federal government and the states and ultimately determine how resources and rights are shared across the federation. My guest tonight is constitutional lawyer Kabira Kwigbodu, and Dr. Nwambu Gabriel is a convener coalition for the protection of democracy in Nigeria. Gentlemen, good evening to you. Let me start this conversation with Dr. Nwambu, is a convener coalition for the protection of democracy in Nigeria. Mr. Kimbolu will join us later as we go on with this conversation. Dr. Nwambu, good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining me. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, good evening, and thanks for having me.
All right, thank you very much. So you're advocating for the protection of Nigerian boundaries. According to you, the sovereignty of coordinates must be upheld to protect our collective future. We'll come to that in a moment. First, let's talk about the issue at hand, which is the amendment of the Electoral Act amendment. There's a special committee on this bill, and that committee should have, rounded off with your subtraction and addition rather by now. But very important amendment, holding all elections in one day, mandatory electronic transmission of results, early voting for security personnel and election officials, diaspora voting, and conclusion of election dispute before swearing in. Which is more crucial to you?
Thank you so much for a very germane question. You see, what we have opined, part of the submissions the civil society organizations have done as input in the amendment of the Electoral Act 2022 that is ongoing, is all-inclusive. We believe that we had experiences. If you look at the trajectory of elections in Nigeria, especially what we saw in 2023, it became pertinent, it became onerous on Nigerians that if we really as a nation want to be a formidable nation, if we want to get it right, if we want the litigation, to be minimal, as it were, we must address all these amendments, squarely. We must do all of them, collectively. For me, none is even more important. All these submissions has to be done if we want to get the 2027 election, right. Because when you get it right, the litigations will be less. You get it right, Nigeria will even be respected in the League of Nations, and the populace, what the definition of democracy really is, that is the government of the people, for the people, and by the people, will count. People will now know that their votes will really count. Therefore, the lacuna, the disconnect, the lack of trust that has been existing between the electorate and even the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, would be bridged, and Nigerians will have more confidence in the system, more confidence in the electoral system, knowing that the vote is going to count squarely.
It's important for you to be very specific, Dr. Nwambu. Are there past recommendations that lawmakers ignored and should now revisit?
You see, it is difficult to really, point out. I am saying, really, I do not want to mince words. I did say that all these recommendations you have mentioned, ranging from, electronic transmission of votes, ranging from diaspora voting, early voting for security personnel and people in sensitive, like the medical field and all that. These are all important. They're equally important, because some of these things some of these mistakes are observations we have observed and have done in our reports, several reports that we have submitted to INEC and eventually to National Assembly, for onward review. So these are collective. If you do one, if we implement or we pass one into law without, while ignoring the other, it would, the effect will not be seen or noticed by Nigerians. The populace, the gap, the mistrust, the lack of confidence, for which the electorates have, will keep increasing. And of course, the voter apathy will continue, as it were.
Well, how might, these amendments to the Electoral Act affect INEC's independence? And I'm asking because you just talked about trust and whether or not or how far this committee or the Senate should go in making sure that Nigerians trust the system. Should the act give INEC more autonomy, especially financially?
Yeah, I have been an advocate of INEC financial autonomy right from the beginning. You see, INEC, by its definition, is not expected or is not supposed, as it were, if you want to get it right, to go cap in hand in, going through maybe the legislatures or the executive to seek for approvals to get funds. When the system, maybe if the legislative arm of government is not happy with it of fund, if the executive is not happy with the performance of INEC, they might decide to stipulate a fund. So INEC should not be an institution. If you want to practice the real independence, the Independent National Electoral Commission, if that independence is going to, not just in the papers, if it's going to manifest physically, it is going to manifest and show to be on ground, INEC must have the source of funding directly, and it must be automatic. The funding should come directly from, from the fact. INEC should not be going cap in hand all the time, asking for money, asking for approvals and all that. These bureaucracies and these bottlenecks have to be removed, so that we can unbundle INEC to deliver the dividends of democracy, because INEC have, as it were, we have a very good technocrat who is now at the helm of affairs, Professor Amotekon. The professor is determined to work. I would strongly appeal to the National Assembly to do the needful so that Amotekon could hit the ground running and do the needful.
But at that risk of over-regulating regulating the commission, and if done properly, what are those changes? What practical changes should Nigerians expect to see in the next general elections? Can these amendments reduce election disputes and litigation?
So this is going to, you see, one of the biggest problems we have is this in this electronic transmission of votes, for instance, is that it's neither here nor there. It is not something that is dependent only on INEC. INEC depends on the service providers. It depends on the availability of network. It depends on MTN, Airtel, and other network providers. So we have to do it in a manner that there shouldn't be sabotage. A network provider can decide, if he knows that a chunk of votes would come from a particular area of the country, the network provider can decide to sabotage it. He can decide to sabotage it because they can decide to turn off, and you will not have any network around there until maybe after 2 or 3 days, as it were. So it is not something that is wholly dependent on INEC. So it has to be done in a manner that transmission of election results should be made compulsory, and we have to bring in a punishment for which the network providers will also face as a result of low network system or lack of network, as the case may be, so that it will be all encompassing. If you bring the punishment to only the presiding officers without recourse to the network providers, it becomes it's not going to work, because we've seen it, we know how these things work. So Now, it has to be a holistic thing. Transmission of election results should be made mandatory. And there shall be very punitive punishments for erring either ad hoc staff or the network providers in charge of network in the areas as the case may be.
All right, let me draw your attention to a recent report that came out of the Senate, which is that the upper chamber called for a major shift in electoral jurisprudence. The Senate president was saying the burden of proof in election petitions should rest on INEC rather than candidates. For you, what's your perspective first, and what challenges might arise if INEC becomes the primary bearer of proof in post-election litigation?
Yes, it has to. For me, I align my thoughts with that of INEC, because INEC should, as the electoral umpire, should be able to provide evidences, should be able to provide evidences that suggest the manner for which proper litigations must go. So the consequences should also be on INEC to provide, this insight as the case may be.
I mean, there are those who are saying political actors could exploit this change to overwhelm INEC with litigation or use it to delay electoral outcomes. What do you think?
Yeah, you cannot rule out, even in the law court, we have cases of jurists who are corrupt, and even the money bags can maneuver and manipulate them. But we also have jurists, we have judges who are firm, who you cannot manipulate, you cannot bribe, you cannot give them money. They will not take it because they are principled. So you also have very principled INEC officials who are determined, because of course they know the consequences. But the way to go too is to bring in a very punitive measure of possible sabotage. If there are punitive measures, very, very punitive measures for any officer of INEC, seen to be colluding with some politicians to scuttle the litigations and all that, the consequences should be there in a manner that people would not want to risk it. And that's the way to go.
So what advice would you offer to lawmakers as they consider this reform? Are there safeguards or clarification in clear terms that should be built into the law?
The lawmakers should hit the ground running. The lawmakers should do the needful, done the requisite oversights and arrangements. Take it to Mr. President and let him sign it into law. We don't have time anymore. The other countries are looking at Nigeria. Why are we not? You say you're a giant of Africa. You are not getting it right. Why are you not getting it right? Since we have identified some of the bottlenecks we have as a developing nation, it is onerous on us to correct these misdemeanors and then forge ahead, so that in the League of Nations we will be recognized and respected as the case may be. And see the way they talk about Nigeria when it gets to, democracy and all that. A lot of countries don't take us seriously, and that's not too good. Why? Because the process itself, because election is a process. The process of elections in Nigeria has not been so wonderful as it were. But we believe Nigeria is an evolving democratic nation. It is work in progress, but we believe it is not yet. There is more to be done.
I mean, I would agree with you when you say it's a process, but how pervasive is vote buying in Nigeria's election? Because, you listen to some stakeholders who say the biggest threat to achieving electoral integrity in our country is vote buying. And from your own lens, are there other major threats that are often overlooked? From your experience, how pervasive is this?
Wow. Vote buying is hydra-headed, and it's growing more sophisticated every day. For every new election, they devise new formats, new formula, with which they do vote buying. And you see, what we have observed as people, an organization, a coalition of organizations that have been collaborating with INEC for over 2 decades now, is that poverty is being weaponized. Poverty is being weaponized by the political elites in a manner that you are made to be so impoverished, in a manner that during elections, even with 5,000 naira, you start thinking and making considerations of possible ability to use the 5,000 to eat for that moment. That is what is happening now. And it's not that the people, most of the people will have sampled opinion why they collect money, why they sell their vote. It is your right. It is like one selling his birthright and all that. We try to educate them in course of our sensitization, to rural areas and to electorates. You find out that most of them believe that even the politicians, after once the result is declared, he might change his phone numbers and you might not get across to him anymore. So what they get at that moment is their own. So they are interested in getting as much as they could, at that point in time. They don't even care what happens thereafter. And that is the way it has been. But we will continue to educate our people. Vote buying is criminal. It's not just a clandestine thing. It is criminal. They are going more sophisticated. But I think the law should come harder on vote
absolutely.
buying. Both the seller and buyer should be dealt with, in tandem,
right. And that's why,
right.
And that's what Nigerians are asking if this proposed amendment to the Electoral Act would reduce vote trading in Nigeria. But let's take a break at this minute. Also, especially the Electoral Act amendment. And I've been speaking with Dr. Gabriel Aluwandu. And right now in the studio with me is Mr. Kabiru Akibulu, constitutional lawyer, political affairs analyst. Thank you very much for joining me on the program. Ongoing amendment to the Electoral Act. The Chairman House Committee on Electoral Matters says this would, give us an expanded conversation on our electoral calendar. It's talking about the mandatory electoral transmission of results, early voting for security personnel, diaspora voting, conclusion of election dispute before swearing in, which is more crucial for us as a nation.
All of them are more crucial, are very crucial. However, like my mother will say, why is it that in Nigeria we always make the palm oil to be sold on the market day? You understand? The election is just by the corner. All these far-reaching amendments, are you saying that they will be able to, to do everything and make it to be, to become law before the time the election will come? I doubt it so much, because if you rush to go, you will come in a hurry too. Because you don't just make law in a hurry like that. You want to make electronic voting, compulsory. You want to, uploading of election results may be compulsory. You want to make, security personnel to be voting early. You want to make other far-reaching, innovative and modern amendments that are very congenial with modern democracy, which everybody will clap for, will hail it. However, it cannot be done in a hurry. Lawmaking is a process. It has procedures. It has stages. It has phases. There is first reading, there is second reading, there is third reading. There is the executive stage, the committee stage, and all that before you can pass it to law. Now, before that one, there must be public hearing. Do you understand? But I have witnessed about 2 or 3. They do it like normal ritual. I think I witnessed one somewhere at airport hotel something. They just come and just say, oh, this. Nobody contributes anything, and they will say they have done public hearing. That's not how it's done.
Are you sure that was not a one-off? A one-off situation?
No, it is not one-off situation. I have attended when I was a student in Zaria. You understand? They did it like that. They say constitutional review. They want to. Well, I thought they will bring questions for people to answer or people to hear their views and opinion and all that. No, even these laws, they don't debate it very well on the floor of the House. They send it to a committee on judicial or electoral reform. The people will go and look at it and so on and so forth. I think if you want to really be serious about it, lawmaking is a serious business. We are making law that will govern about 200 million Nigerians or more, and you want to do it in a hurry. And why is it that is when election is coming, they have all the ample chances. This set of lawmakers We voted them in now, about, I think there will be 3 in May. Do you understand? Now, and election, by June this year, those who are going to come back for for re-election will have become candidates of their various political parties. Is it that time they are politicking, they are campaigning, they are, sensitizing their voters or their supporters that they will have time for this amendment? I think the time is too short. We need all these amendments. They are all very important. However, are we ready for it? Again, when you are talking about all these amendments, there should have been provision in the 2026 budget to make provision for all this. You want electric vehicle. Where are the machines? And these machines you want to use, you must have tested it before you can just put it in an election and it will fail. At the end of the day, we'll run into trouble. So I think
there's still enough time for that. You don't think so?
This is February. By the election materials should have been printed at least some 4 months before the election, at least.
Election is still next year.
Next year, maybe February or so. Now, one of the reasons, the amendment 2, is that all elections must take place one day. That will help us in the sense that we know we are now practicing democracy. Before, in 1999, that was how it was. Do you understand? In 2003, that's how it was. In 2007, that's how it was. But later, I don't know how, during Obasanjo, they just changed the calendar all of a sudden. And it now the federal elections will take place one day first, and the state elections will take place again. No, it's not done that way because no state wants to be in the opposition. By the time the federal government has taken majority in the National Assembly, you want your state to now be a bench warmer or onlooker for 4 years. They want to belong to the mainstream. All these things alter the destiny of the people politically.
All right. Apart from all of this I had mentioned earlier, there passed the recommendations that lawmakers ignored and should now revisit.
The problem is this. All these recommendations that they want to make, the amendments they want to make now, they have been there since. It's not today. People have been talking. Why is it when election is coming is when they were talking about? And again, let us ask ourselves, are we sure that the lawmakers are ready or will be ready to pass the law, especially very close, at a time that is very close to their re-election? And don't forget, we are big men in the house. Until the caliber of the people, that are making the law change, I think there may be issues.
Do you think we are preempting this committee or the Senate or the National Assembly? Perhaps we should wait till all of these recommendations have been imputed into the amendment. You don't think so?
What I am saying is this. If they make all these recommendations into the amendment, then they have not done justice to the issue. Then they have not helped Nigeria. They have not helped democracy. They have stolen a cheap goal on Nigerians. Do you know why? Because we didn't have opportunity to contribute. Okay. Lawmaking is not just, we run a country, built on democracy as at today, at least civil rule. Now, let me tell you, because the tenets of democracy are not just there as far as I'm concerned. Now, this part of it, you don't just make law overnight. The National Assembly will just sit down and say, this is the law we are making. The public has to be consulted. Don't forget again, some of this law, though electoral are fine. If it is constitutional provision to tinker with the any constitutional provision, you must go to the State House of Assembly. They must have 2/3 of the states if it's constitutional provision. If you are talking about electoral, fine, it's a different ball game. However, within the little time, because this law must, you must sensitize the people. You must know how people feel anyway. But all over time, card reader came, the court jettisoned it because we were not prepared for the usage as at that time. Even before that time, Kenya has used card reader and it worked for them. So now they came again with uploading of election results, maybe by what's the name of this term that they use. Now, the court said it's not mandatory by their rule because it's not in the Electoral Act. It's in their guideline. Now, they want it to be in the Electoral Act. But when you don't plan your bed well, when you don't plan your night well, you may not sleep very well. You understand? As you lay your bed, so you must lie on it. Let there be enough foundation. Right. Let there be enough preparation. Let there be readiness. Not all this shoddy and quick passing
all right, then, Mr.
Kimbulu.
Over the years, we've always called for the independence of the electoral umpire, not independence on paper, for proper and real independence? Should the act give INEC more autonomy, especially financially? But please hold that thought. Let me bring in Dr. Nwambu. Dr. Nwambu, I have with me here an article you wrote on behalf of your organization. You're calling for the protection of territorial integrity. Now, what personally moved you to frame this issue as administrative treason rather than routine boundary, or just a local government or government's dispute?
Thank you so much for your very genuine question. If you look at the trajectory of states, in Nigeria, you see the old Bender state that Delta State was carved out from the old Bender State. You now have Edo and Delta now. In terms of the boundary demarcations and agreements on oil wells and all that, if Delta State was said to be greedy, if Delta State wanted to take it all, Edo State right now, as we speak, wouldn't have been recognized as an oil-producing state. Delta State decided to cede part of the oil well that naturally fell into the Delta State part of it, because they believe they have a brotherly understanding and political alignments and all that. Then if you go to other states too, like Rivers and Bayelsa, they settled amicably and all that. You go to Imo State, you see it was done peacefully. Now, there is a situation that is here between Cross River State and Akwa Ibom State. It is not just the oil well that is the issue. The issue is that the 10th edition of the administrative map of Nigeria, which is the legal source of truth, the legal map that covers the water territorial boundary of Nigeria, has been distorted at least between.
Dr. Nwambu, are you there?
5 times. It has been distorted 5 times. Now, we have now discovered that there are some persons that have manipulated the system just because they want all the oil wells to move to Akwa Ibom State. And we are saying that in fairness, that you should not close the maritime blockage. You should not close the mouth of the sea of the Calabar Basin just because you want all the oil wells to move to a particular state. We are also saying that these people have now decided to see at least 780 hectares of Nigerian territorial waters to Cameroon, not because of the judgment of the International Court at The Hague, but because there is a clandestine arrangement in a manner that would favor Akwa Ibom State alone. What we are saying is that this arrangement too, that is well funded, this clandestine arrangement, has ill-informed Mr. President. They have also ill-informed the Supreme Court of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And the rulings are made in error. Can we continue like that?
All right, so beyond Dr. Nwambu, please hold on.
And the facts of
all right, please hold on.
And what is happening. If you go through what we have written, you will see that there is life in it. In fact, what is happening actually is that the NBC, the national, the NBC is colluding with some other government agencies, both retired and serving, to distort the territorial borders of Nigeria for the purpose of corruption and making money, for themselves, without telling Nigerians the truth.
All right, so do you have, can you hold on, Dr. Nwambu, do you have documents to back up these allegations? And beyond maps and court rulings, how is this erosion of Cross River State's territory affecting ordinary people on the ground?
Yes. In fact, in the next 30 years or 40 years, the consequences of all the oil explorations and drilling will be hit. All the oil that's being drilled in Akwa Ibom State, the consequences is going to be in Calabar, because that is where the river basin is. Calabar is going to be the new Ogoniland in terms of, when you have environmental hazards. That is where, and this is a state, due to the manipulation, it has now 0% oil, 0% oil allocation. And by this distortion, Nigeria has lost at least 780 hectares of its territorial boundaries. That is dust to Cameroon, not because of the ruling.
All right, I want to come back to the studio, but quickly. Dr. Wambo, I want to come back to the studio, but quickly. Has the organization attempted any engagement with relevant agencies on this matter?
Yes, we have. And some of the governments, like the Office of the Surveyor General, has written to the consultants, that they are not aware of those distortions, and those distortions did not emanate from them. They have written to that effect. So what we are saying is that some persons are deceiving Mr. President. Some persons are lying and do not want Mr. President to know the facts.
All right, then. All right, I'll come back to you.
States that was having over 1,000 oil wells are zero now.
All right, Dr. Wambo, I'll come back to you in a moment. Mr. Kimbolu, I mean, there's a lot to talk about on the program today. Yeah. He wants to talk about electoral amendment and also some agitation about the protection of Nigeria's integrity. But back to my question, should the act give INEC more autonomy, especially financially?
The problem we have with our election or whatever is not the issue of autonomy. INEC has autonomy. They were set up. People
financially?
Will say, they have autonomy financially. They have a budget for them and all that. They do everything on their own. It's not the government that buy them vehicles. It's not the government that give the contract for the printing of ballot paper, sensitive electoral materials and all that for them. No, they are in charge of everything. So to me, that independence is enough. Now, when you say that, with the kind of independence they have, is for them to sit down as an agency to be ready to do what is just and fair and what Nigerians want. We want a credible election that can stand the test of anything. Do you understand? No, because, sometimes if a person is rigged out in an election, if a person has lost an election, if you lose an election on the merit, there's no big deal there. You can even congratulate the opponent. However, in a situation whereby it seems like you were rigged out and it's so clear, luminously clear, then that's where you see people going to election petitions, fighting here and there, fighting tooth and nail to ensure, we are going to make it on either another. But one most important thing about all this amendment is the non-swearing in. It's the completing of all electoral disputes before swearing in. That is the issue. Because you are fighting somebody. He has been sworn in.
This is Nigeria, Mr. Kimbolu. Yes. Is that realistic?
It's realistic. It's realistic. Let me tell you, I'm an election petition expert. In 2007, when you start election petition, you would do it for 3 or 4 years. Like in the case of Oshiomhole, we did it from April 2007. It did not complete until November 12, 2008. Do you understand? In the case of Ondo State Governor, it started in 2007 April. It didn't complete until February 2009. In the case of Fayemi, it started in 2007. It did not complete until October 2009. In the case of Osun State Governor, it started in 2007. It didn't complete until November 2009.
Have you also thought about the off-cycle elections?
Do you understand? Now, the off-cycle election is something, I don't know what the National Assembly should do about it. In fact, it's a leak. It's a kind of this thing that leaks the pulse of the nation, because they spend a lot, they call it that galloping election or off-season election. Do you understand? It is not good. I think about 5 states: Ekiti, Ondo, Osun, Enugu, Anambra. Anambra, yes.
Yes.
Then with Kogi, those are the 5 states. So, and Bayelsa, there are 6 of them. So, it is not good. I don't know what they can do. But it's only when we are serious to do things that it is possible. But let me tell you, at that time, the story I was telling, after that, you do election petition for 3 years, 2.5 years. But they now made the law and say, you must do election petition at the tribunal must not be more than 6 months. In those days, we spend up to 2 years there. And no limit until when you finish. Now they're saying, it looked as if it was impossible without the practitioner there, but we're making it. The Court of Appeal, 60 days. Supreme Court, 60 days. And everything 10 months. If it's our National Assembly or House of Assembly, 8 months. We were doing it. So the only thing is that they will start the election petition ahead of time. You understand? The election will come earlier. They will have concluded the election 6 months before the end of the tenure of the holder. And within 6 months, we can do election petition and complete. Supreme Court 1 month, Court of Appeal 1 month, Tribunal 3 months. That would be fine. Instead of 6 months. It's realistic. In 1983, Obama did not challenge the election of Shagari. And in his interview, he said, it's not that I agree with the outcome of the election. He said, but the time limited for filing an iron cast case is too short. The time allowed to file a petition, is too short, that I cannot make an iron cast case. That's why he did not go to court. It was 30 days then. He said it's too short. But we're doing 21 days now, and we're fine, and we're making it. So if we reduce it to 6 months, 3 months at the tribunal, 1 month at the Court of Appeal, 1 month at the Supreme Court, we'll be fine.
Before I go back to Dr. Wambu, Nigerians are saying the biggest threat to achieving electoral integrity in Nigeria is vote buying. Do you think this is something the establishment of National Offences Commission would address?
Yes, vote buying is very, very criminal and inimical to democracy or our electoral process. But that is fast growing its ugly head. In fact, it has become almost established. You understand? There are different types of vote buying. There is one, there is pre-election buying, there is see and buy. Do you understand? See and buy, on the day of the election, there are ways to do it. See and buy is on the day of the election at the very venue. It's a joint thing. Do you understand? They have a way they organize themselves. So, but in this kind of thing, security operatives are complicit. There is no how. Because you see somebody voting, somebody is already there, telling him, looking at what he pressed. Do you understand? He will do like this to somebody who is about a few meters away. That person will point to another person from a few meters away. Maybe about 3 houses to that voting point is where you will go and collect money. It happens, and it really happens.
does not have the power to prosecute.
INEC does, but they are not serious with it. I have been appointed by INEC to prosecute electoral offender sometime in 2015. The NBA National also appointed me to prosecute electoral offender in 2015, differently. I went to Abuja, I went to regular, they gave me the files. When I came to INEC office in Lagos, in fact, they were begging me. I'm telling you life story now. On the day you arrest the electoral offender, their political godfather will get them released in less than 2-3 hours. Do you understand? Because they don't want they want something to spoil the name of the party or of the candidate. And in most cases, there are no incident reports. And where the incident reports are written, they are destroyed. At that time, those 3 cases they gave me from Abuja, I could not access them. There was no file. To go. There was no file.
We still have a long way to go.
We still have a long way to go. So it's not something we can start overnight and say we want to protect the electoral.
People are calling for the establishment of National Offences Commission.
Yes.
How would that address?
Well, to me, all this establishment of these offences and all that, they are not our problems. Our problem is, are we ready? That is the thing. We have EFCC, we have ICPC, we have the police, we have everything. What have we achieved with them? Do you understand? Okay. Because the politicians themselves don't want these things to work. The National Assembly themselves that are talking, most of them don't want it to work.
I think that's why some Nigerians are doubting this amendment.
Yes, let me tell you. When people talk today, some constitutional committee, they will say the constitution we have is not a valid document, is not a this. I don't think that is our problem. Even the document handed over to us by the military that we are criticizing is even better than what the politicians can make today. Until when the National Assembly stop being the retirement place for politicians or governors.
We'll come back to that. Let me conclude this conversation with Dr. Wambu. Dr. Wambu, on this matter of erosion of Nigeria's territorial integrity, your organization has given the federal government 14 days, an ultimatum of 14 days. 14 days to do what?
Yeah, we are saying that the federal government has 14 days to correct this abnormality and fix the right the wrongs. We are also calling that DSS and the EFCC, because these are financial crimes and economic crimes, should arrest perpetrators in the office of the NBC, both retired and serving, who have doctored the 2008 dichotomy map to maximize oil wells to be attributed to only Akwa Ibom states. That they have to be arrested and prosecuted in line with extant law. What we are saying, essentially, is that only 76 oil wells that belong to Cross River State has been diverted to Akwa Ibom State because of this. And because of this diversion, Nigeria has lost 780 hectares, which is at risk now. And we are not losing this large water phase. We are losing it, not because of the international court ruling for which we ceded the Bakassi Peninsula. We are losing it because of our own corruption, because of our own wickedness. A state that owns thousands of oil wells is angry, does not want the other mother state to have the legitimate 76 oil wells that genuinely belong to it, and it has shut it off. It's ironical, and we are given 14 days that Mr. President should know the truth and correct these abnormalities so that Nigeria will cease to be a laughing stock in the League of Nations.
All right. Mr. Akiwolu, quickly before we go, by tomorrow morning we should have an updated version of the electoral amendment to the electoral law. What would you like to see? Well,
I would like to see electoral dispute, first of all, most importantly, electoral dispute being concluded before people are sworn in. That is the major thing, because by the time you swear in the governor, you already have the resources of the state to fight you. So I don't think you should be using
great place
resources of the state
to leave this conversation. Hopefully we'll continue some other day. Thank you so much for speaking with me, gentlemen. Dr. Wabu Gabriel, convener, Coalition for the Protection of Democracy in Nigeria, constitutional lawyer, political affairs analyst, Mr. Kabir Akiwolu. Thank you for always. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening.
Bye. Thank you.